Hello, everyone. So yes, I'm Kerri Henry. Thank you for having me here today. And I'm from Transport Canada. And yes, my task I've been given is to come up with the regulatory framework for space launch and re-entry in Canada. And I don't know how to use this. The green button. Okay, thank you. All right, so far so good. So the regulatory work is important for the sector, but it does also sit within a larger whole-of-government approach to ensuring that we can have commercial space launch and re-entry in Canada. So we've had others here today speaking about some of the other elements on this slide, and I'm here to talk about the Transport Canada pieces. So we announced as a government in January 2023 that we were going to do the work to develop a space launch and re-entry sector. There's two streams of work for Transport Canada. One, it was an interim regime, and that was to allow launches to happen while we developed the second stream, which was comprehensive regulations. We've had two recent announcements related to both of these. So with regards to Stream 1, earlier this year, we published our requirements on our website. So those are the requirements that you need to meet if you want to launch now. So we put those up there. We asked for feedback. We're currently reviewing the feedback that we got, but we're always open for more feedback. The second one, the announcement that we have was which is new since I spoke here last year. Very happy to say that we tabled some legislative amendments in Parliament on April 21st, 2026. So that is a big step for us in moving forward with our comprehensive regulatory regime. And you can see the last item on the slide is TBD. Eventually, we will be having new regulations in Canada Gazette 1 and Canada Gazette 2. So Transport Canada has the authority to regulate rocket launch, space launch, because of the Aeronautics Act, which includes the authority to regulate rocket launch. So no one can launch a rocket from Canada other than a model rocket without approval of the Minister of Transport. The Minister of Transport may approve if it's unlikely to affect aviation safety and it's in the public interest. Right now, in terms of a regulatory framework, that is it. There is no certainty, no kind of transparency on what we use to determine that those two criteria are met. And while that has served us well so far, with the increasing complexity and cadence expected for launch, we needed to have something more comprehensive. In terms of the interim regime, this is what it looks like. We've worked with interdepartmental colleagues to come up with a series of reviews that you have to pass for us for the minister to be confident that those two criteria are met. So in terms of the policy review, this is an interdepartmental review. We work with 15 different departments and agencies to do reviews, or we've established the process to do the reviews for these. One of this is to ensure that all laws are met, for example, that you've met all your environmental laws. We'll also look at making sure that we're not launching anything that would affect our national security or that of our allies. We'll also make sure that we meet all of Canada's international obligations, such as notifications under the Hague Code of Conduct. We have a payload review as well, so this is specific, obviously, to the payload. We would also be doing this interdepartmentally, and this looks at some of the similar things. So we'll also look in terms of the payload, is that going to affect our national security or that of our allies? We'll also be upholding our international obligations with regards to that payload, for example, the registration convention. We'll also consider under the payload review the growth of the sector and Canada's reputation. We have liability, insurance, and financial responsibility. So here we will review the launch to establish the amount of insurance that needs to be held based on a maximum probable loss type scenario, and we may also require operators to indemnify Canada. We have a safety review, and I will not go into detail on that because the next presentation is on safety, but in general, we followed the US FAA requirements, and the idea is to ensure the safety of the public, including the airways and waterways. And we'll also consider payload considerations related to safety. In terms of the security review, the launch operator must develop, document, implement, and maintain a security plan that anticipates, prevents, and mitigates unlawful interference to make sure that the launch is unlikely to affect aviation safety and that it's in the public interest. There is also a technology safety review. This is specific to technology from countries with whom Canada has entered into a technology safeguards agreement. So far there aren't any, so not doing that review, but it is on the books for when that's relevant. In terms of process, we have an optional notice of intent process that we strongly encourage all operators to use. And then that is it so that we can start discussions on the launch early, make sure that we know what's coming, that the other departments who also have to provide licenses are aware of what's coming, and we don't have a gap at the last minute. This was very new. So a couple weeks ago, we tabled, the Government of Canada tabled in Parliament the Canadian Space Launch Act. And this is to allow us to have the full set of authorities that we need to have to regulate space launch and re-entry. Its purpose is to address gaps. If you've looked at this act and you read it, you'll think, well, it's just a bit of a weird list of random things. It's not this is the full list of authorities we need to oversee space launch and re-entry. And the reason for that is the Aeronautics Act already gives us the authority for about 95% of what we needed to do. But because the Aeronautics Act was drafted long before the current regime we're in now of the realities of space launch and re-entry, it's had some gaps. And so this act is to address those gaps. And I will go through them in general, but I will note that this is a proposal that's in front of Parliament, so it may get changed, it may never make it through Parliament. It is all very much dependent on that parliamentary process. Once it receives, hopefully it will receive royal assent, and then we'd be able to move on to the next step. But in terms of what we proposed, the first one is to allow us the ability to develop a launch and re-entry approval framework separate from the one from aviation. And that would allow us to develop oversight approval processes that are specific to this sector, which is just fundamentally different from the regular aviation sector, particularly in timing and scope of launches. For aviation, we issue Canadian aviation documents that are very difficult to suspend or cancel, and in terms of launch, we might have to be more responsive in terms of where the risks are. The second one is we have the ability right now to prevent incompatible land use near airports, and that is to allow airports to continue to function. You can't build something near an airport would then make it unable to be used as an airport. The same issue could exist with spaceports. As you have a spaceport, if then someone builds too close to the spaceport, it could make it not able to be used safely. So we are looking to get authority to allow us to expend that authority to spaceports as well. Third, it would allow us to develop a flexible financial responsibility framework. So this is to allow us to go a bit further on insurance. So rather than just setting the minimum amount of insurance, it will allow us to use other types of approaches. So for bonds or other types of financial responsibility. Also key, it allows us to develop an indemnification regime similar to regimes that are in other countries. So what I mean by that is in terms of a launch, we will require operators to indemnify Canada to a certain limit, and then Canada in turn will indemnify operators above a limit. And the purpose of that is if there is a mishap and there are third-party damages, it's very clear who is responsible, and it's also very clear that it's not the third parties that are responsible. Fourth, we would ensure that TC has the ability to issue emergency directions. Hopefully that one's pretty clear. We need to make sure that we have that authority. We have it for general aviation. It would extend to launch and re-entry. Lastly, we have some consequential issues. There's other acts out there that use the term aircraft as it means in the Aeronautics Act, and we want to make sure that we don't unintentionally create burden or additional steps that would cause a problem. So these legislative amendments and the lessons learned from the interim regime will allow us to continue to support the industry with its current launch plans, but also allows the creation of the comprehensive regulations. The last piece here is consultation. So the interim requirements are published and the act is in Parliament. So we are turning our attention now to consultations. So our website is up. We've asked for feedback. We've already gotten feedback and we are reviewing that. We're also reaching out to some specific communities. So we are hosting some industry sessions. If you're in industry and you haven't been invited to one of those, please reach out. Make sure we have you on our list. We've just started a discussion process with Indigenous groups to get their input on our approach. And we're looking at potentials for getting feedback from particularly impacted local communities. So in general, we're open for feedback. We've got feedback on the website. We will continue to be open to feedback right up until we publish in Canada Gazette 1. Then there's official pre-publication process there where that is for feedback. So please, hopefully you've got my point. If you have any questions, comments, concerns on what we've proposed, please let me know. This is our website. Any questions about the programs or requirements are best to go to the generic email address that's there. But also, please feel free to reach out to me if you have my contact information. And last point, if there's companies out there thinking about launching and who don't know me, please reach out so we can get you onto our list of our community. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak here.